Our scripture reading this morning comes from the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. Listen to and hear the word of the Lord. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, I have a confession to make. I've always been a bit envious of people who can deliver a compliment at a dinner party by saying something like, "This is just the way my mother used to make it." If I said that, it would not be a compliment. Marilyn Tyndall had many gifts. The culinary arts were none of them. Her daily menu decision for dinner was based on expediency, not recipe. Vegetables were canned. Meat was well done and unseasoned. Salad dressing was a scoop of mayonnaise. Potatoes, well, they came out of a box. But it wasn't all her fault. She learned these techniques from her mother, who thought that the way to make a chicken dinner more appetizing was to put yellow food coloring in the gravy. You get the picture. If we wanted to improve the dinner, if we wanted to improve the flavor of the meal, we needed salt. And salt does that. That's what salt does. David Kessler, who's the former head of the FDA, wrote that every food manufacturer employs chemists, whose job it is to determine the just right combination of salt and sweet and fat that make those potato chips so desirable. And of the three, the most important of them is salt. So it's in everything. And apparently for good reason, because if you ask a chef, someone who knows about cooking, to tell you about salt, he will tell you that the right amount of salt does not just add flavor to the food, but it actually enhances the flavors that are already there. There are, of course, the health concerns. Last June, in fact, the FDA put pressure on food companies to reduce the amount of salt in processed foods. And a lot of people said, well, don't invest in salt, but the salt companies were unconcerned. Their response? Fine. Don't put salt in the food at the plant, because everybody will just pick up the salt shaker. And apparently that's what happened. And if you want proof about that, despite all these health concerns we heard about salt, salt consumption in the United States has not changed in 50 years. People like salt. And people liked salt back in Jesus' day too. But not just because it made food taste better, it was also used as a preservative. If you salted the food that you harvested or the animal that you killed, it didn't rot if you salted it. It was even used as a fertilizer because it would kill the shallow-rooted weeds so that the crop could grow better. It was so valuable, in fact, that it was even offered to God as a sacrifice in the temple. So apparently God thought salt was good. But salt, whether it's a flavor enhancer, a preservative, a fertilizer, or a gift to God, has no value whatsoever, according to Jesus, if it loses its saltiness. Which raises the question, how can salt lose its saltiness? Well, in Jesus' day, it could, because the salt that they used in that time could deteriorate over time. Literally, it fell apart. It would become dust, and it would lose all its salty characteristics, and so it became worthless. Salt needed to be used before that happened. And Jesus says, we are salt. So what does that mean that we are salt? Well, Christian Theological Seminary president Matthew Bolton puts it this way: salt is a small thing of great value. Just a pinch can make a tremendous difference. It not only adds flavor, it spices things up. Salt brightens and sharpens other flavors already present. Salt enlivens and enhances a meal's other flavors. It brings them out. It makes them themselves only more so. And the Christian community can and must do the same. We should bring our own flavor to the mix, of course, spicing things up here and there. Then, as much as we should work to enhance other flavors, enliven other tastes, making the world a more savory, more delicious, more beautiful place. If we do not do that, what good are we? So Jesus is basically teaching us that we are to enhance and enliven the world around us and to make it more savory, delicious, and beautiful before we lose our saltiness. And Jesus says we are also light. Well, here's another story from my youth. When I lived in Pleasant Hills, most of my friends lived on the street parallel to my street, but behind us. And so if I wanted to go see my friends, I had to walk through what we called the secret jungle. And so when I walked through the secret jungle in the daylight, going to visit my friends, life was good. But then sometimes I would come home and it would be dark. And when I walked back home in the dark, it didn't look like the same path that I walked on when I went to see my friends, because there was no light. It was easy to fall. It was easy to trip. It was easy to run into them jagger bushes and that, which was a big concern in my time. It was also really creepy. And so as I started down the path in the secret jungle, my pace would accelerate. And it would accelerate, and it would accelerate until I was running, trying to get home. And I would run until I saw the back porch light at my house. It was a sanctuary, a light shining out to the homeward bound. Safety was at hand, and the closer that I got, the more I could see. I wasn't worried about tripping over anything anymore. I wasn't worried about them jagger bushes and that. And so what happened was I could walk then, because I could see where I was going. Light, like the salt, simply enhances what is already there. It enlightens it. And we all know what I'm talking about. When you walk into a dark room, what's the first thing you do? You turn on the light, because otherwise it can be a little scary. Now, back in Jesus' day, people lighted their houses with oil lamps. And at a certain time of night, they would light all the oil lamps in the entire community. And they would do that because people would be looking for someplace safe to go. They were looking for sanctuary, looking for hospitality. It's the way things worked back in those days. And when they lit all these oil lamps in their houses, people could see them from miles away. And they knew that if they went to those lights, they would find hospitality. They would find food and shelter and fellowship. And Jesus tells us that we are light. So we need to have the same effect on the world around us. We need to provide beauty and visibility and nourishment and life. Salt and light. That's what Jesus says we are. Enhancing the world around us. Pastor Christine Chikoyan has an interesting take on this. She says this: neither salt nor light is rare. They are the most ordinary elements. But still, both salt and light are essential to life. They are good for the world, and their value is found in their usefulness. Like ordinary salt or ordinary light, our goal is to be beneficial, useful, life-giving elements in the world. Salt and light. Useful, beneficial, life-giving, flavor and color. That's what Jesus says we are. And what he means by that is when we live our lives as disciples of his, we should make a difference in the world. Pretty heady stuff, right? Pretty overwhelming. And I know what many people say when they hear these things. Jesus must be talking about someone else. He's not talking to me because I can't enhance the world. I can't enlighten the world. I can't change lives. I can't make a difference. I don't have the skills. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. Ah, but you do, and you can. Every single one of us, regardless of our abilities and our gifts. And that's because we are all connected. That's what the physicists tell us. Quantum entanglement. Here is something I read this week that blows my mind. I was reading a book called The Great Unknown. I recommend it. And in this book, a particle physicist says that if you just look at a particle, it changes it. It changes its direction. It changes its speed. You don't have to touch it. You don't have to apply any force to it. You just have to look at it, to observe it. And when I heard that, it occurred to me that if that's true, even our most minimal contacts with the world around us can have the most profound change to the world, can make the biggest difference we can possibly imagine. What happens to one thing happens and affects everything. That's what the physicists tell us. Now, my favorite quote about this comes from Leonard Sweet. I've said this before. It's my favorite quote of his. He's the dean of Drake Theological Seminary, and he compares this all-connectedness to Jesus, and he says this: Jesus taught that we live in a world where what goes on in one corner affects every corner, where what happens to one child in Turkey affects every person in Manhattan. How can this be? One of the greatest discoveries of the soul, Jesus said, is the awareness that there is no separation between anything. Touch one thing and you touch everything. Touch earth and you touch heaven. Help one life and you help every life. Show one person love, and you show love to the universe. Inasmuch as you did it to the least of these, you did it to Jesus. And so you can enhance the world. You can make a difference, but you have to do something. So here's my challenge. I want to challenge every member of this congregation, every member of the church, even the folks who visit frequently, a challenge to do just one thing every year. One thing. One church project. One ministry team. One mission event. Just one thing. Do that, and you will enhance the world around us. You will change lives. You will make a difference. We will make a difference. This church, this congregation, can be a giant salt shaker. We can be a huge lighthouse. And together we can make a difference beyond any possible imagination. Here's what I mean. A couple of years ago, when I was stated clerk at the Presbytery, I went to the annual Polity Conference. Yeah, it was riveting. But at that meeting, then stated clerk of PCUSA Grady Parsons stood up and he asked this question: who does your church minister to? Now, all of us out in the crowd, we were thinking to ourselves, oh, how many people belong to my church? Or how many people come to church on Sunday? But he said, no, that's not how you think about this at all. He wanted to know, who are those people who are touched by your ministries? Because that is who you minister to. He said he grew up in a church of about 20 members. But he said they affected the lives of hundreds of people because their main ministry was a food bank. And so hundreds of people would come to the food bank when the food bank was open to get food. And that was who his church was ministering to. We have a church with 450 members. 450 members. A church our size can minister to more people than we can possibly imagine. So how do we get involved? How does anyone get involved? Well, here's a way. Open up the bulletin and take a look at the announcements. There are lots of announcements of things going on at the church where people need to get involved. We need people to come and do things here at the church. That's one way. Second way is to look on the back of the bulletin. And on the back of the bulletin, you're going to see the 4 branches of our government. And you're going to see the ruling elders who are in charge of each of those branches. You know who these people are. Go and ask them, what do you need for us to do? How can I do it? And when do you need me? Find out where you can help and how you can do it. But right now, we're looking for people to do several things. We're looking for people to volunteer for Vacation Bible School. And we're also looking for someone to step up and be next year's Vacation Bible School leader. We're looking at the Christmas Affair, which we always need volunteers for, and the Christmas Affair generates over $10,000 a year that we give away a week later to ministries and missions throughout Western Pennsylvania. And we need people to come and help us with the Christmas Affair, and we also need people to take over the leadership of the Christmas Affair. I've already talked about Family Promise this morning. Family Promise provides hospitality to the temporarily homeless. We need people to come and sleep 2 nights this week. But we always need people to come and help those folks. The Chiapas mission team, which is leaving on July 22nd, is still looking for people who are interested in going to a foreign mission for a week. We are looking now for new elders who lead and govern the church. We're looking for deacons who take care of the members of the church. But even if you look at all those things, you still might not find anything that you're particularly interested in, something that you have a passion about. So if that's you, come to us and say, this is what I have a passion about. This is what I'd like to do as a ministry here at the church, and we will help you do it. Create your own project, your own ministry team, your own mission event. That's what it means to be salt and light. You know, it's one of the things I say when people join the church is, you can expect from John McMillan to provide you with an opportunity to do something important for God and for the world. Because doing stuff like that is good for us, and it's good for the world. And it's who we are. Jesus says we are salt and light. Now we need to act like it. And that's what the church is for. And that's what this church is for. To give people the opportunity to do what they are created to do. To enhance the world around us. To give it flavor. To give it color. To make it beautiful. To make it visible. To nourish it. To give it life. That's what Jesus did. And that's what he calls his disciples to do. And so I'm challenging you. Do one thing. Just one thing. Please? Please? Thank you. Amen.